Welcome to Developing the Leader Within podcast, the podcast that brings you leadership insights from the brightest minds shaping our world. Join us as we dive into conversation with trailblazers, innovators, and change makers, spanning every corner of the globe. Get ready to explore new perspectives, gain actionable insights, and become the leader the world needs today. Unleash your potential. Tune into Developing the Leader Within podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome to International Month on DTLW podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now, as it'll help us getting our show to others and help us reach our next milestone. Make sure to catch us streaming on Parade Deck, on Roku, and Amazon Fire TV on the Purpose Place Network, and catch our exclusive members-only content Going Deeper Within on the Lions Guide Academy. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Jasmine Escalera. Jasmine is a mindset and healing coach and career expert at Bold. She helps women break toxic generational patterns of overworking, overgiving, and playing small so they can reinvent their lives with joy, freedom, and purpose. Jasmine, welcome to the show.
Hey, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you again.
And it is. And folks, we had a live session a while back, and you're welcome to go visit that in the YouTube channel. But today we will be speaking about break free from overworking, overgiving, and old stories. A lot of things that we are plagued with in our lives, not only females, males as well. But before we get into that conversation, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, yeah. I love that you mentioned males and females. I think we are all plagued with all of these, so we can definitely dive into them. A little bit about me, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My family is from Puerto Rico, so I'm a very proud Latina. My background is actually, I have my PhD in neuropharmacology, so I did a long career stint in the STEM field, which was absolutely amazing, and kickstarted my first business, where I was helping women really gain confidence within their careers, take bold action in their career. And the reason why I was really focusing on that was because I noticed that at being a Latina in STEM, it was really challenging. There was a lot of code switching, there was a lot of conforming, there was a lot of overworking to prove my worth and value. And I found that a lot of women were feeling like no matter the field or no matter where they were in terms of position, they felt very similarly. And so my first business was really focused on helping particularly women of color to build the confidence within their careers to move forward in the way that they wanted to. And after much soul searching and after much reinvention and change in general within myself, I started to realize that, hey, I think we're doing a lot of these things because we're taught how to think, how to believe, and how to act. And those patterns are actually what's running the show. So the reason why we do or don't do things in our lives often has to do with some program that is running without our knowledge. And if we can bring these patterns and programs to light, it's very easy for us to then look at them sort of under a microscope, dissect them to understand where they come from. Do they even belong to us, or are they potentially generational patterns that are passed down? And how do we really start to break these using neuroscience and soul-based practices? And that's what I do now, is really help women understand what are those underlying programs and patterns that are running, and how can we break them in a way that feels really empowering to you so that you can live the life you really want to live.
And very powerful work. You mentioned the challenges of being Latino, Latina in STEM. I come from the meteorology and oceanography background, so I am also in the STEM field and saw those challenges myself as a Latino, trying to conform, fit in, and overcome what seemed like challenges that others did not have to go through simply because of their background. So I resonate with that myself. But you talk about breaking toxic generational patterns. So how
Hmm.
do overworking and overgiving become normalized in families, especially for women?
Yeah, so I can give myself as an example. And I think a lot of people who have grown up in very similar ways think similarly, and it comes from a very similar space. So I mentioned I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in the projects, and my parents didn't get the level of education that I did, but they in fact taught me that, hey, if you want to live a different life, then education is the key. But they also taught me very much, and so did my community. My community very much reinforced this, that in order to survive, you have to hustle. And everything comes really hard. And so you get this program running in your mind, or you get this idea running in your head that if I want to have the life that I am meant to or desire to have, then I have to hustle and grind for it. And I'm going to have to sacrifice a lot in order to be able to achieve it. And so, for example, in my career, the way that that showed up was I was the workhorse, right? I was the one that was constantly saying yes to everything, thinking that I had to work really hard to prove my worth and value, even though I had the degrees, the accolades, the certificates, everything to prove that I deserved to be there. And so many of these patterns can come from our upbringing, can come from our community, and can also come from our legacy. Many of us come from communities in which not just we ourselves have experienced discrimination, or we ourselves have experienced barriers being put up to our success, but our ancestors have as well. And it is proven through science, through epigenetics, that we carry the trauma of our ancestors even as far back as 7 generations in our body. So it is that we are seeing it play out in front of us. We are being told certain things from our family who has their own scars and trauma, but we're also holding a lot of trauma within ourselves. And that creates not just trauma for ourselves, but patterns that run in the background that teach us and tell us this is the way life is supposed to be. And it's up to us to really bring those patterns to the forefront, bring them to light, and ask ourselves, is this in service of me now and where I'm going? Because the interesting thing about these patterns is they have served you up until this point. Many of the women I work with are highly successful, high achieving women. And so these patterns of scarcity, these patterns of overworking, these patterns of always saying, yes, I'm going to sacrifice myself for everybody else's well being have gotten you to where you are. So inevitably, they kind of like clench onto you, they become a part of you. And they have receipts and proof that, hey, you're doing very well. So, like, we're good. But when you want to get to that next level, when you want to live more in your purpose, when you want to understand what your purpose is, when you want to live more freedom and joy, these patterns are essentially the opposite of how you want to be now and where you see yourself going. And so that's the interesting part of this, is that many of these patterns need to be honored because they have supported us in getting us to where we need to go. But we come to this place in our life where we say, I want different now. I don't want life to be this hard. I want to feel more of a sense of passion in my life. I want to be more free. I want to have more joy. I want to be more playful. And hustle and grind, if that's your default, is the complete opposite of those feelings.
And that question, is this serving me, is so important to ask yourself, especially when you're talking about playing small. So, in that topic or that theme, what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the first signs that someone is playing small in their life or career without even realizing it?
Yeah. So, what I always kind of like to tell people is you always essentially know when you're not playing up to your level of the game that you know you could be. So, there were so many times when I was sitting in a room, in a boardroom or in a work meeting. And there were so many times I would tell myself, Jasmine, you should speak up. Like, you have something great to say. There's something really that needs to be said. You're the one that can provide a little bit more expertise and knowledge on this topic. but fear, insecurity, doubt, imposter syndrome would keep me quiet. So we always know when we're playing small. We feel it, we sense it. Our body and our nervous system often triggers us to this knowledge even before our brain really catches up to it. So it comes a lot from that feeling of I desire to do something. I really want to do something, but often people will say, I don't feel confident enough to do it, or I doubt myself, or I don't think I'm smart enough. So, those statements, if that's something that you're saying or some derivative of that, that means you know that there is another version of you that is claiming this space, using their voice, and really being in their confident self, but something is holding you back.
And that is so important for us to realize. Yeah, and if we feel something, it always boggles my mind how we could feel something like that and we still go with the default, right? And that's what
Mhm.
you work with people on to try to get away from that, but it's so hard. And we often, although we feel it and we know it, we have
Mhm.
this strong desire to just outlive it and outgrow it, and as you say, reinvent ourselves. And you help women reinvent themselves and their lives. So what does reinvention truly look like, and where does someone even begin? Because a lot of times we just don't know.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I would like to kind of start with like how I define reinvention. And I think that will help us kind of think about the starting points. So for me, reinvention is not about the external, it's about the internal. But reinvention is often triggered by external desires. So we see something and we're like, wow, I want that, or I want to be that. I see this amazing woman who's claiming the CEO spot. I want to be that. Or I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see my friend is taking this amazing trip and I'm like, oh, I want that. But inevitably, when you say, I want something, and you feel that initial feeling of like, I can't have it, that's when the internal change truly has to happen in order for you to get the external or to have the external that you're seeking. So, reinvention to me is an internal process triggered by external desires. And so, where to start really is to understand that when you see something, and I tell people this all the time, that jealousy isn't necessarily a bad thing. When you see something that sparks a desire, even if someone else has it, and you say to yourself, I desire to have that, that's where the starting point is. And then it's really an identification of what is holding me back from achieving that. And not just actions, because actions truly come from our internal belief system. So, to go deeper and to ask yourself questions like, do I feel I'm worthy of it? Do I feel like I am the person who can have that desire? Is there some internal blocker or internal negative thought or internal limiting belief system that's stopping me from acquiring that? So, very often in my career, I would see people who had these great titles and making all this money. And my internal belief was, well, I have to hustle to be that person. So, I'm going to have to sacrifice certain things in my life to achieve that level of success. And so, thus, I was always stopping myself from being the uber successful person, even though I really wanted that. I wanted that level of success. But my internal belief system was I have to sacrifice my time. I have to sacrifice the things that I love in order for me to be a successful career woman. And so it's very often those things that we really need to look at, and we need to reframe them so that we can truly have what it is that we desire. So I would say a great place to start is like, what is it that you see? What is it that you desire? What is it that you want? And take it a little bit deeper to ask your excuse me, to ask yourself, is there a limiting belief system that might be holding you back from achieving it?
Yeah, and limiting belief systems are full in effect in a lot of people's
Hmm.
lives. It definitely had been in my life until I was able to ask and answer those deep questions about
Yeah.
myself, being truthful and saying, okay, you know yourself better than anybody. You can answer this one.
Mm.
And, eventually you
Yeah.
grow into believing that you can and believing that you are worthy and believing that this too is attainable for you regardless of the externals. And so great recap there for you as you answer that, but it's amazing what you can do after you can answer those. Now burnout has, and you
Mm.
talked about overworking, right?
Hmm.
I don't know many Latinos, Latinas that have not been challenged with this overworking thing, because I think
Yeah.
we're grown up, as you mentioned earlier when we started, of these, you gotta just give it your all because there's so many people and you got this over you and you got this over you. And we really do believe that we just have to spend every amount of energy we have to just get a little bit. And so how does joy factor
Yeah.
into the healing process when someone is shifting out of burnout and into purpose?
That's so interesting. So first off, with the burnout one and with overworking, of course, I am a Latina. I grew up in a community of amazing Black and Brown families, and I tie it into my experience. Burnout is pervasive, and burnout is affecting, I think, way more Americans, male, female, however you identify, than we think. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that. So this one is a pervasive one, and overworking is a pervasive issue as well. I actually say I think burnout is an epidemic in this country that we are not in any way, shape, or form looking at or addressing. Now, in terms of joy, joy essentially is the love of what you are doing. And so when we are experiencing burnout, burnout can very often be a signal that joy does not exist in this area, right? So burnout is the counter to joy. And so when we are experiencing burnout and stress in some area of our lives, it is a real trigger moment to step back and say, okay, this A is not going to be something that I can sustain. It's not sustainable to be in this burnout and stress. And B, I may not even be enjoying this at all, like no part of this process. And so when we think about joy and passion, we really want to be asking ourselves questions like, what do I really enjoy when it comes to my work, what I do, who I am? And when do I almost kind of have these moments where I feel at peace, right? I feel like I am in this moment and I can live this moment forever. And you can do that exercise in terms of your life. You can do that exercise in terms of your career. But essentially, you're looking to understand who you are, what brings you peace and happiness, and how you can insert that more into your life. And what I want people to understand is that joy is something that you can capture in every single moment. So we often are like trying to get to joy, and then we burn ourselves out trying to get to joy. When it's almost sort of like, how can this moment that you are in be something that you simply do enjoy? And if you come back and say, well, this moment is, there's nothing I could do to enjoy this moment, then that's a great answer too, right? Because it essentially tells you that whatever you are doing, whatever area of life this is a moment of you to take for you to take a step back and to do some deep internal reflection around, what does joy, purpose, passion mean to me, and how can I start to insert that more into my life? And when it comes to the career space, it sounds like this wonderful magical idea to have this job that brings you joy and passion and fulfills your purpose and your internal mission. And I used to work with a lot of women where it's like, I want my career to be that. And if we can get our careers to that place, that's wonderful. But your career doesn't have to fulfill your joy, your passion, your purpose. It can be the medium for you to have that joy, passion, and purpose outside of work. But what we are always trying to do baseline is say, I enjoy all aspects of my life. I understand how all aspects of my life fulfill me and provide to me. And I am not stressing out, burning out, or not setting boundaries in any of these areas. I feel as though I am sustained in all areas of my life. That's where we want to find that balance.
And that balance is key to a very joyous life. And so we have to get there, folks. But you can't force it, right? You have to really look into what you're doing, why you're doing it. And you mentioned boundaries. Sometimes you have to set some boundaries that may be hard to establish. But for the sake
Mhm.
of your own sanity, your own well being, you have to. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned community. Hey, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the project. I grew up in New York. We are surrounded by community everywhere we are. And typically,
Mhm.
when we're young, it's community that really helps us grow. So, what role does community or sisterhood play in breaking free from these patterns and embracing a more liberated version of yourself?
Oh, community is very key. It's essential. I had run a community called the Courage Crew, which I'll be bringing back this fall. And it was a community of women who were reinventing different areas of their lives together in a community space. And it was beautiful to see the support that each person was providing to each other. And the key here is this was a community of women who were activated to change. So when we talk about community, what's really important is that we surround ourselves with individuals who are going to up level us or uplift us, not individuals who are going to pull us back. And this was one of the most challenging parts of my healing and reinvention journey because there were many relationships, including the relationship that I had with my parents, where I had to reinvent the relationship, change up the relationship, because my healing journey had to be done on an individual level. And I also had to acknowledge that their healing maybe would never happen. And that wasn't my responsibility. And so, when you are going through a healing journey, a reinvention, when you want to change your life, it's essential for you to surround yourself with individuals who are going on that journey with you. Now, they can be supporters, meaning they're cheerleading you on, they're like giving you the hoo ha's, they want to hear all about what you're doing. Or they can be activators, meaning they're individuals where you look at them and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to go, right? Or they can be mentors, so people who are supporting you in the way of giving you knowledge and guidance. So there are different kinds of people in your community that can help you and guide you, but it's essential that you're focused on their they don't have to be on the journey, but they're on the journey in some way. They are really here to help me. So, community is an essential part. You cannot go through a healing or reinvention journey alone, because no matter what, there are components that are going to feel lonely because you are going really deep within yourself, but you always have to have that support. And so for me, when I was going through my career and realizing that I was repeating the cycle of toxicity, whether it be toxic bosses or toxic workplaces, and I was really trying to break that pattern, it was seeking out the support of other women who had gone through similar experiences that helped me to realize, oh, I am not alone. They help to activate me by showcasing that this isn't just a Jasmine problem. This is a problem that women of color are experiencing in the workplace. And that acknowledgement, that validation was what truly helped me to say, okay, I'm not crazy. other people are experiencing this. And now that I know other people are experiencing this, not only can I get myself out of it, but I can find people and lean on people for solutions to help me really create the change.
So powerful and so needed community. And I tell you that had it not been for the right communities for me growing up, I would not be where I
Mm.
am. So
Mm-hmm.
I will never say I'm a self made anything because I know someone had to move something in order for me to
Yeah. Yeah.
capitalize on the things that I did when I did. So
Mm.
thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned the October community coming back. So, what do you have coming up, and where can the viewer or the listener follow or support you?
Absolutely. So, the best place to follow and support me would be LinkedIn. It's the place where I post about all the great things that are happening. I currently do have a pattern breaker experience that is a one on one experience that you can join with me to identify and break a pattern that's holding you back from the life you desire. And coming up in the fall is going to be a group experience because community is so important, where we're really going to be focusing on how to break the pattern of playing small in your relationships, in your career, and also making sure that you can step into your next reinvention journey in a very confident and powerful way.
Well, folks, we'll have all that information as part of the video and show notes for you to be able to support Jasmine in her endeavors and what she's working on. And Jasmine, thank you for sharing your knowledge on this topic.
Of
Folks,
course.
we are overworked. We know we playing small. We know it. And we have tools now to be able to overcome that. Folks, today's episode is sponsored by the Global Trends Magazine, the Outlier Project, Fantail Services, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, Ascend Meditations, and Chop AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.